One touch from a stranger healed 30 years of trauma. A 5-second touch from a complete stranger healed trauma that 30 years of therapy couldn't cure. This is that story. My name is Dr. Lisa Thompson, and I was America's leading trauma specialist, helping thousands heal from their deepest wounds. For over 2 decades, I had built my reputation on being able to guide people through their darkest moments, helping them recover from abuse, violence, and unimaginable pain. But at 48, I carried a secret that was destroying me from within. Childhood abuse that had haunted me for 30 years. Despite my professional success in healing others, I couldn't escape the prison of my own past. The irony was devastating. Every day, I sat across from patients and taught them about recovery, about finding peace after trauma, about Buddha's teachings on suffering and liberation. Yet every night, I went home to a private hell that no amount of professional knowledge could touch. I had tried everything imaginable, decades of traditional therapy with the best specialists in the country, EMDR sessions that were supposed to rewire traumatic memories, hypnosis to access buried pain. I had traveled to ayahuasca ceremonies in Peru, spent months in Buddhist monasteries in Tibet, studied every ancient and modern healing modality known to humanity. Nothing worked. The trauma lived in my body like poison, manifesting as chronic pain that doctors couldn't explain, insomnia that left me functioning on 2 hours of sleep, and a complete inability to trust anyone completely. My nervous system was stuck in permanent fight or flight mode, even in the safest environments. My marriage had failed because I couldn't bear to be touched. The moment someone's hand reached for me, even in love, my body would freeze with terror. My children felt the distance I created to protect myself, but it broke my heart knowing they thought their mother was incapable of real affection. Professionally, I was at the top of my field, but personally, I was broken beyond repair. The woman who helped others heal couldn't heal herself. The expert on trauma recovery was drowning in her own unprocessed pain. I had reached the end of my rope. After 30 years of carrying this burden, after trying every possible path to healing, I was preparing to end my life. I was convinced that some wounds were too deep for even Buddha's infinite compassion to reach. I had scheduled my suicide for the day after my 48th birthday, believing I had exhausted every possible avenue for healing. I had written letters to my children, arranged my affairs, and made peace with the decision that death was the only escape from this unbearable pain. On what I planned to be my last day alive, I sat on a park bench in downtown Chicago, crying as I wrote final letters to my children. I was trying to find words to explain why their mother couldn't stay, why the pain was stronger than my love for them. That's when a homeless man approached me. He was exactly the kind of person I would normally avoid, disheveled, smelling of alcohol, wearing clothes that hadn't been washed in weeks. In my professional life, I advocated for compassion toward the homeless, but in my personal trauma, I saw potential threats everywhere. But instead of asking for money or bothering me, he simply said, "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." When I looked up with tears streaming down my face, something extraordinary happened. This stranger, who society had written off and forgotten, saw something in my pain that 30 years of trained professionals had missed. He gently placed his weathered, dirty hand on my shoulder for just 5 seconds and said words that would change my life forever. "Buddha sees your pain, sister. You've been fighting alone for too long. Let me carry some of it for you." In that moment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 30 years. complete safety in another human's touch. The trauma that had been locked in my body since childhood began to dissolve like ice in sunlight. I felt Buddha's presence flowing through this unlikely vessel of compassion. The homeless man, whose name I learned was Robert, had somehow channeled divine healing through the simplest human gesture, a touch offered without expectation, without judgment, without anything but pure love. "I was abused too," he whispered, still keeping his hand on my shoulder. "Spent 20 years on these streets running from it, drowning it with alcohol, hating myself for what was done to me. But Buddha taught me that our wounds become our gifts when we learn to share them with love." Robert continued, "You've been trying to heal your trauma by understanding it, analyzing it, treating it like a problem to be solved. But trauma isn't healed by the mind, it's healed by the heart. It's healed when one broken person touches another broken person and says, 'You're not alone.'" In that moment, sitting on a park bench with a homeless stranger's hand on my shoulder, I realized that healing hadn't come through expensive therapy, exotic retreats, or years of studying Buddhist teachings. It came through one human being truly seeing another's pain and offering to share the burden. Buddha's compassion had reached me through the most unexpected messenger, someone society had deemed worthless, someone I had been trained to see as dangerous. Yet Robert carried more healing power in his broken life than all my degrees and certifications combined. That 5-second touch changed everything. I canceled my suicide plans immediately and instead asked Robert if he wanted to grab coffee. Over the next several hours, this homeless man shared wisdom about trauma and healing that no textbook had ever taught me. "The Buddha didn't heal by keeping distance," Robert said. "He healed by moving closer to suffering, by touching the untouchable, by loving the unlovable. That's what real healing looks like." Together, we founded Buddha's Touch, a revolutionary healing program proving that human connection heals trauma more powerfully than any medical intervention. I partnered with Robert, who became co-founder despite his homelessness, or perhaps because of it. We created healing circles where trauma survivors practiced Buddha's fundamental teaching. Suffering shared is suffering halved. Love shared is love doubled. Our method was simple but profound. Trained volunteers learned to offer safe, healing touch combined with deep listening and unconditional compassion. The program spread like wildfire. Within 2 years, we had healing circles in 45 countries, helping over 300,000 trauma survivors discover that Buddha's healing flows through human hands and hearts, not through complicated theories or expensive treatments. My research proved that therapeutic touch releases the same neurochemicals as advanced trauma therapy, but works faster because it addresses the body's memory of violation with new memories of safety and love. When someone who has been hurt by human touch receives healing through human touch, the nervous system learns to trust again. Major hospitals now integrate our Buddha's Touch protocol into their trauma centers. Medical schools teach courses on healing touch. What started on a park bench with a homeless man's compassion has revolutionized trauma treatment worldwide. I wrote a book about our experience called Healed by a Stranger's Hand, which became a global phenomenon, showing that sometimes Buddha's greatest miracles come through society's most forgotten people. Robert, once homeless and forgotten, now directs healing centers worldwide, proving that wounded healers carry the most powerful medicine. His life story has become an inspiration to millions, from the streets to healing stages across the globe. We've trained over 10,000 volunteers who carry Buddha's Touch to refugees, abuse survivors, veterans with PTSD, and anyone carrying unbearable pain. They learn that healing isn't about fixing people, it's about loving them back to wholeness.
Our volunteers work in refugee camps, women's shelters, veterans' hospitals, and anywhere human beings are suffering. They don't need advanced degrees or years of training. They just need open hearts and the willingness to touch another person's pain with compassion. The Buddhist touch movement has proven that healing is not a privilege for those who can afford expensive therapy. It's a birthright available to anyone willing to receive love through human connection. Robert taught me that trauma survivors often become the most powerful healers because they know suffering intimately and can meet others in their pain without fear. Our deepest wounds, when touched by love, become our greatest gifts to the world. Today, people travel from around the globe to experience Buddha's touch healing circles. But the real miracle is that anyone can create this healing. It requires no special training, no expensive equipment, just one human being willing to touch another person with pure love. If you're carrying trauma that feels too heavy to bear, if you tried everything and nothing has worked, if you feel broken beyond repair, remember Robert's gift to me. Sometimes the healing we need most comes not from experts or professionals, but from one fellow traveler willing to touch our pain and say, "You're not alone." Buddha's healing doesn't require temples or ceremonies. It flows through willing hearts, compassionate hands, and the simple miracle of human beings choosing to love each other through the darkness. The stranger who touched my shoulder for 5 seconds gave me back my life. But more than that, he showed me that we are all capable of channeling Buddha's healing power through the sacred act of truly seeing and touching another person's pain with love. If this message touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to know that healing is always possible. Subscribe to learn how human touch can channel Buddha's miracle power. Comment "touch" if you're ready to believe in the healing power of human compassion. Share this story with someone who needs to know that Buddha's touch is always available through loving hearts. Subscribe for more stories of miraculous healing through connection.